Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for our presentation this evening on the Western Screech-Owl by Ren Ferguson. Before we get going, I'll ask that you keep yourself muted so that there aren't any interruptions to Ren's audio throughout the presentation. Also, this will be recorded to share on the Salt Spring Island Conservancy website as well as on our YouTube page. So if you do not want to be in that video, you can turn your video off. And I think that's all I have for housekeeping. As we move into the presentation, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat at the bottom of your screen, and I'll let Ren know that they're there and read them to Ren, and Ren can answer them throughout the presentation. We can also hold some questions at the end if you have any questions toward the end of the presentation. So it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, Ren Ferguson. Ren has been with the Conservancy for 14 years as a consultant for all things avian. Their work includes baseline surveys for acquisitions, species at risk surveys, monitoring, and mitigation. And most recently, Ren has been our lead for the Western Screech-Owl Stewardship Project. Ren has a passion for birds and the natural world and works with a number of conservation NGOs and the provincial government to protect and mitigate threats to birds and the ecosystems that both they and we rely on. So Ren, please take it away.
Hi, thanks, Deborah. That was lovely. Welcome, everybody. It's really great to be able to be with everyone and share my definite addiction to owls, especially screech owls. So happy to see everybody. I just also want to welcome Tanya Tripp is here. She's my owl mentor and has been working with me a lot over the years. And also Megan Boers is here. Welcome to both of them. I think I'll have them say a few things during this talk. So first of all, these projects require a lot of financial support, and we have support from Environment and Climate Change Canada through Protected Places, Conservation Decision Lab at the University of UBC, Faculty of Forestry, that's Tara Martin's lab, the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, and of course, the Salt Spring Island Conservancy. My forward button is not working. Oh, there's always a problem. Okay. So here is that wonderful little owl, the little horned one, Western screech owl. So how do we study a nocturnal owl that is very cryptically colored, so you can't see them very well, and they're only about 8 inches tall. So we rarely get to see them during the day. And at night, obviously, you don't get to see them, but you most often will hear them. Typically, this is the visual that we get of an owl perched in, roosting in the top of a Douglas fir. They will appear somewhat like a wasp nest, paper wasp nest up in the tree. So the breast of the owl is facing this direction. And you have the wings and the tail. So not very much of a visual. So tonight, I really wanted to bring you into the world of the owls, but also into the world of how we study them and the different technologies that we use. Sorry, is somebody saying something? No? So as you can see, this, you often could walk right by a tree with a screech owl in it. This owl is perched, roosting in the cavity of an arbutus tree. So they are very good at not being seen. This is an eastern screech owl, and they will take a different posture if they're feeling threatened or a little bit nervous. This is a concealment type posture where they erect their ear tufts close their eyes and puff out their facial feathers. Sometimes those feathers will even cover up the bill. So if you squint your eyes, this just looks like this owl is part of the actual opening itself. This is a photograph by Megan. This is the interior subspecies of Western screech-owl that she worked with on her thesis. And he's also feeling a little nervous. He's got his ear tufts up. His eyes are partially closed. All of his body feathers are tightly compressed. He's just like, I don't really like what's going on here. And this is the same owl in a relaxed posture. He's actually asleep here. So you can see that he's just kind of rounded, his eyes are shut, his ear tufts are down, and he's looking a lot more relaxed. So we are lucky at times to see owls during the day. This is a video of an owl on an island that I was working on. Now, I apologize because this is a bit of a bouncy video. It's hard to hold the camera still when the lens is extended, but you'll get the idea. He wasn't too sure of me for a while there, but he relaxed again. So when we're out wandering around in the woods looking for owls during the day, we look for sign as well. And this is basically owl urine. So when owls defecate, it's actually just the urea. So it's similar to urine in mammals, except for it's thick and chalky and white. So it's very distinctive. So we watch for that kind of thing on the floor or on the forest floor or even on the trunk of a tree. That's Tanya Tripp looking around for owl sign and for roosting owls. Sometimes we'll get lucky and we'll find an actual owl feather. The owls do, adult owls will go through a full or almost full molt every year. So they do drop their feathers. This is an adult owl midway through his molt, and he's not looking too happy. He's having a bad feather day. Owls, whether they're molting or not, spend quite a bit of time preening like all birds. They need to keep their feathers in good shape. So this is the same owl as I showed before, and he goes through a little sequence of preening in this video. Oh, it backed up on me. Sorry about that. Oh dear. Sorry, folks. There we go. preening and a good head scratch. It was late afternoon and he was getting a bit more active. That evening, I watched him fly to a nearby tree and snatch a large moth out of the leaves, and he flew to another perch and lifted his foot up, took it out of his beak, repositioned it, and stuffed it down his throat. And he was happy, happy owl. So the other thing that we look for when wandering around is another kind of sign, which are owl pellets. Owls regurgitate the products that they can't digest, fur, bones, feathers, parts of insects. Here you can see this was a mouse that it had consumed. That's the jaw and some leg bones there and another jaw. This one's quite fallen apart. It's an older pellet. Other times, if we happen upon a favored roost, we'll find the mother lode of pellets, like I did in this one location. Some of these light brown ones have a lot of insect products in them. This one up here was a vole that it had consumed. And down here, this pellet broke apart. You can see a leg bone and some claws sticking out, and that's the leg of a songbird. And this is the other pellets that I took apart. So that's the vole jaw, and a shrew was consumed. So we can discover a bit about what these owls are eating, which is really interesting. This is a woodland beetle. Almost every pellet had parts of woodland beetles in them. Those are the heads here, and then the wing covers. The other thing we'll look for are what we call pluck sites. So when owls capture a songbird prey, they often hold it on the ground and pluck the feathers out before consuming the rest of the bird. So this was at a site where we knew we had an active nest, and there was quite a few birds that these owls had taken to feed their young. So that's kind of the daytime walking around looking for owl sign and trying to figure out where they're located. But mostly a nocturnal owl is going to be active at night. So they're very vocal. So when I was first working with owls, a way that we mostly tried to find them was through call playback, which is going out at night, listening, and then playing their song, their territorial song. And sometimes they will respond and sometimes they won't. So it wasn't the most always trustworthy and successful way to go about it, but that was the main method we had. Lots of folks joined me in that venture. This is Kathleen and Pat from Nature Salt Spring. David, Peter, and Bernadette are some of the other people that helped out. And this is Tai and Maya from Stakea Learning Society on Salt Spring. They came out and they're preparing for a survey in Quaquam. The other thing about doing call playback for owls is that playing their song is disruptive and can cause the case of irritable owl syndrome. So no, that's kind of a joke, but it is, in all seriousness, causes them to diverge from what they were doing in order to expend energy defending against an intruder that's not actually an intruder. So it's not the best way to work with studying owls. it's better to not play songs. The worst thing about playing their calls and having them respond is that it opens them up to predation. This is a barred owl, well known for being a predator of smaller owls, such as screech owls. They're a large owl with the only ones that we have that have dark eyes and this kind of necklace ruff and very streaked breast. You've probably heard them. They're active at daytime and night, and they're very, very vocal. So using call playback has its big disadvantages in exposing these birds to potential predation. And also, I think we all need to realize that we have phones now that contain all sorts of songs and calls of birds, including owls. And we have to realize that using those out in nature is highly disruptive. So I just wanted to mention that because we all have a lot of capacity to play these things at this point. So a big breakthrough for us is using autonomous recording devices. This is a wildlife acoustics recorder. So these recorders have just really been a game changer because we can deploy these out in the woods and they will record for whatever time we set them for, and we just leave them out there and they will record for us. So this is a passive way of learning where owls are and also monitoring their activities. So it's just been an amazing thing to utilize these units. So they also record over time. So you can imagine they can capture a lot of information and a lot of data. For a long time, we needed to look at that data manually, which was a lot of work. This is me just in sight, looking at a recording to try to discover where the owls were on this island. So we can look at recordings in real time out in the field, or better yet, we now have software. So Tanya has worked with the guys down in Washington State. They have created a software program that's trained first for monitoring the northern spotted owl, but now it is now trained on all of our owl species and a variety of other birds and mammals. So these programs can go through massive amounts of data and pick up the calls of owls and other things. And then we can, in turn, use a program. The one that we use is Kaleidoscope, which produce what's called a sonogram. So this is what you're looking at right now, is a sonogram of a pair of Western screech owls, a male and a female, doing a duet. So on the x-axis, it's a bit like reading music. On the x-axis, we have the time. And on the y-axis, we have the pitch in hertz. So these lower pitched calls are the male Western screech owl doing his, their territorial song is kind of like a bouncing ball that increases in speed at the end. The female is much higher pitched. He's at about 600 hertz. She's up in 800 hertz and above. And then these little stacked up fine notes that you see here are the female making some sweet little calls. I kind of call them crew calls. I am going to play this for people. If you have your headphones available, I recommend you use them You might want to just hold them away from your ears at first to make sure you don't have them too loud. But hopefully everyone will be able to hear this. So you're going to be able to follow along this sonogram as it's playing, but the full sonogram is not included in this picture. I couldn't include the whole thing. So I'll point to the different calls as they go along. But later on in this recording, you're going to hear some different calls. You'll hear them, both the male and the female, doing what we call double trills. So that starts with a few notes, follows with some faster notes, and also the female does what we call a drum call, which are single notes on the same pitch. So I'll play this for you now. So I see that there are some questions in the chat. Deborah, is there anything that you
It
think?
was just someone who couldn't hear it, but they were able to turn up the volume and were able to hear it. Thank
Oh,
you
good.
for noticing that.
Oh, good. Okay. So we were quite lucky to have a bunch of these recording units shared with us from the provincial government last year. So we've been able to put out these units in really hard to reach places on Salt Spring, places that we could not get out at night safely. So what's exciting is that we've found a number of new territories this way on Salt Spring, which is really, really excellent news for the species in general, but also for our local populations. So it's a pretty exciting discovery. I'd like to invite Megan to uh, unmute and talk to us a little bit about your work and using thermal imaging for your monitoring and thesis for your thesis research, Megan?
I can't tell. Sorry, I'm on my my iPad and I can't tell if you can see me, but hopefully folks can. Either way, if you can hear me, then it doesn't matter. So yeah, we used a thermal monocular, which is just essentially just looks at infrared light or actually heat, which I guess is infrared light, but that way we didn't put any ambient light on the owls themselves, so we could observe the owls kind of as they are in their natural environment. This was a male here, and you can tell there's just like the heat is so well conserved on these birds that those feathers are so insulating that all you can really see is those big orb eyes, and there's a little bit of heat coming out of the mouth. But yeah, they're still very tricky to find, given that those are the only parts that really show up that well. Yeah, and we were using this to kind of watch the owls and look for nest sites and kind of all some other fun stuff. And yeah, you want to share the video?
Here's your video if you want to set that up first.
Yeah, so this was one of the sites, one of the nest locations. So you'll see that little red stump, that little red point on the stump that Ren's pointing to right there, that's actually chicks in there. So in a second, when Ren presses play, there'll be a adult owl. I don't know whether it's the male or the female, but they come in for a really quick prey delivery, and then they kind of run off, and they'll do lots of prey deliveries right at dusk. So they'll do kind of like wham bam, one right after the other. This could be that they've cached some prey, and that means that they're just getting those chicks nice and satiated. Yeah, you want to press play?
There he comes.
Super quick.
Super quick. I'll play it one more time because it really is, comes in from the left.
You see how hot the legs are too.
Ah, very warm.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Very
a
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan. She'll come back in a bit to tell us about some other stuff. So this summer, I was working with Tanya, and she found this nest in a Douglas fir. This is the female sticking her head and half her body outside of the nest to take a look at what's going on. I'd like to invite Tanya now, if she's willing. If you want to set up what we did that evening on our stakeout and how that went, Tanya, it'd be great to have you describe that if you want.
Sure. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so similar to what Megan has, I have the same brand, but it's a binocular that gives your eyes a little bit of a break instead of looking through one opening, but it gives you the similar images like Megan shared. So very, just keeping up with technology, all these different ways to observe without disturbing, like Ren was talking about earlier, through call broadcasts, which I spent my first many years of owl surveys using that as the method, but have pretty much dropped it completely. I'd say, Ren, for the last 10 years, or at least for the last 6 or 7 years, as we've realized like that recording that Ren played of that pair, like I don't think Ren and I ever heard the drum call of the male and the female in this species until we started using ARUs.
Yeah.
Because when you're out there playing the call playback, you're just going to mostly have the males and the females doing territorial responses. So anyway, it's just been amazing. And so another tool that is incredible that Megan introduced me to when said, "Oh, this thermal scope," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! I need to learn more about this." And my sister and I had been talking about this concept for a long time. So with this, we brought this along. I said, "Oh my gosh, Ren, we have this nest. This is our opportunity to observe this female in the nest at night from a distance." So Ren is just deploying a recording unit right in front of the nest. Right, if you go straight up from Ren's head and over to the right, that's where the female is, right there in that cavity. It's not a very big tree at all. And so we sat there, and what I encourage people to do for owls, and it won't always happen, but if you are interested in if owls are in your neighborhood, just to go listen at dusk and until it turns dark. And then maybe you will just naturally be treated with a beautiful calling of all kinds of owls that you could possibly hear at that time of night. Right now, the great horned owls. Go out right when it's dusk, sunset. You're very highly likely to hear the great horns right now. So anyway, we sat there. We got all ready to do this stakeout of watching the owls, and um, that's what we did. We just sat there and just wanted to hear what they would naturally start to do. So I don't know what else you'd like me to add to that, Ren, but back to you.
Well, I will go back one. So I'll just set this up a little bit because here is the nest tree, and there she is sticking her head out of the hole. The next image will be similar to this one, but it's the image from Tanya's thermal binoculars. So if you see this arbutus tree here and the broken off stub, that can kind of orient you a bit in the next picture. And so there's that stub. It's from a slightly different angle. The nest tree is right here. And there she is. There's the heat signature of that owl sticking her head out. So Tanya, I remember we were sitting there and it was getting close to dusk. And about 100 meters downhill from us, we heard the male start to call. And we were like super excited. And then he flew up and got a lot closer and called again. And she called then a couple of times, these quiet little begging calls. And then she flew from this nest cavity up to meet him for an exchange of food. So just watch this thermal image video. There she goes. I'll play it one more. Oh, I was going to play it again for folks because it happens so quickly. Oh, it won't do it. Okay. So this is the tree after she left. And this is the amount of heat that was still left on the edge of that cavity. It was kind of funny because this occurred the same day as the total solar eclipse. So Tanya and I called this our ring of fire on that day. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, we had an equally cool eclipse that
We
night.
did. It was awesome. So that pair did fledge some young that year, and Tanya, was funny. We were in the area looking around. Tanya looked up and she's like, "Ren, I've got a chick right here, right now." And it was just there it was staring down at us. So that was just a really happy moment. It's always so happy for us when we know these birds have successfully fledged young. Another technique that we began to use, and I think Megan's used this a little more than us, is the wildlife camera. This is an image of Aidan Haig, he's from the Conservation Decisions Lab, and he helped me both last year and this year. He's deploying a wildlife camera to face the direction of a nest that we had found. So this is a still image from that camera. The trouble with these cameras is that their trigger is not fine enough to capture the speed in which these birds move. So we didn't get a lot of information, but what we got was pretty fun. So if you look at right here is the natural nest cavity in an arbutus. And up in the corner here on his favorite perch, I'm pretty sure this is the male, is the owl. He's flying in, waiting to deliver food. And that's him heading towards the cavity. So it captured that movement, but it's so fast. These birds are really fast. So I'll show you, pardon me?
Ren, I've got a question from the group.
Oh yeah, please, go ahead.
From Pierre, he'd like to know if the owls hang around the nest site all year, and do they reuse the same cavity year after year?
Great question. These pairs do maintain their territory year round here. They're resident owls. They don't migrate. They may disperse a little bit more to hunt, but they will generally hold a territory that's good. And we have had owls reuse the same nest cavities and also reuse nest boxes. Tanya's had them use the same box multiple times. So yes, and the following year after this pair fledged a couple young from this nest, they didn't use it the next year. They started out in the same location and were singing and duetting, and I thought, oh good, they're going to reuse it. And then they moved somewhere else. So it's variable. So this is a video of one of the adult screech owls leaving the nest cavity, and it actually landed on the wildlife camera. So if you've got your headphones in, just beware that there's a bit of noise as the owl lands on the actual unit. So one of them stayed perched there. A second owl flies in from the right in a minute here. There it goes. Lands, and you can see he's got something long and skinny in his bill. I think it must be a large worm. That's what Megan was thinking. And he is now flying into the nest cavity. She or he flies off the unit, and then the other bird leaves the cavity. So it's kind of fun when you can get some of these kinds of videos and images with these wildlife cameras. This video is later in the season, and this you'll want your headphones for this if you've got them. These are the chicks inside the cavity, and when they're getting older and they are getting closer to fledged, they come right up to the cavity and make these sweet little begging sounds because they're really, really hungry and they're calling for food. And it's kind of like, so just listen carefully and you'll see the second the sibling owl squeeze its way in. There's another little eyeball coming up at the bottom there. These next images are some successful ones that Megan got, and I'll let her describe what's going on here.
Sorry, I finally figured out how my iPad works. Yeah, so this
You're good.
yeah, thanks. This was a nest in the interior, and this is one of the tagged owls that I had, Corn Pop. So you can see him there with the band on his right leg, and he's got a tag. So we know that this one's the male, and he's got a nice, looks like a young fish there, but quite sizable that he's bringing in for the chicks. And yeah, nice and slippery. You have the other. Yeah, and there's the young getting the fish. So this camera was the only one that got reliable camera data. It was up there for 13 days, and over the course of those 13 days, we got 12 fish brought in, couple small mammals, lots of insects, a couple frogs, you name it. But yeah, hopefully in the future we're able to get more of this kind of data because it's very interesting. But yeah, thanks, Ren.
And
yeah, I guess this was a site in Summerland. Kind of once I figured out that they were fishing, I had tracked one of a different owl that was also tagged to the site where he was perching over a creek, and I thought, I wonder if they're fishing here. So I put up a camera, and sure enough, this screech-owl flies down into the stream and grabs something that you probably won't even be able to see on here, but it is a really tiny, tiny fish.
right. So watch down in this lower right-hand corner, you'll see the owl come in and grab something and then hop over to another perch. So it looked like he grabbed it maybe in his talons and then shifted it to his bill. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's what happened. Small snack for an owl.
Small snack for him. I'll play it one more time so people can. That's totally amazing to be able to get that kind of information, Megan. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Camera traps.
Camera traps.
Sometimes they work.
Sometimes they work. Yeah. So you might be wondering why I'm showing a picture of a pileated woodpecker in the middle of all of this, but owls, small owls like screech owls, pygmy owls, saw-whet owls, they require cavities that are created by woodpeckers like this pileated or northern flickers to make their nest cavities. So they make these beautiful cavities with this lovely round opening and a nice deep cavity. And once they have used they've used it for their nest or a roosting cavity, it's available for screech owls. So they will use cavities made by woodpeckers or naturally created cavities from like a branch breaking and then decomposition, creating another kind of cavity. But so this is another piece of technology that we use in order to peekaboo into cavities to find out if they're actually active for a nest. So this is a peeper camera that has a lens and LED lights at this end, and we attach it here to an extendable pole, and then we can watch on the video cam what's going on once we get it up there. So this is a little video just showing raising the pole, the cavity, the peeper camera up on a pole. It's always very exciting. We don't know if we're going to get something, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we're reaching up really high, and it's quite a challenge getting a camera into a 3-inch hole at a great height, but we persevere and we get there in the end. So this is a video cam image from Tanya of a nest cavity that she checked. I'm having trouble with this. Sorry, there we go. So there's Mama in that cavity. So we generally can't see what's going on underneath her unless the chicks are fairly big, but at this stage, she's either under eggs, on top of eggs, or on top of young birds. Quite often, the female will spread her wings and cover things really well, so we can't see, but we do know we have an active nest, so that's the main thing. This is another little video from Tanya of a nest that she also monitored. So it's pretty fun to inspect these cavities and find out what's going on. If we have forest that does not offer cavities for these birds, they cannot have raise young without cavities. So something that we can do to enhance the habitat is install nest boxes. This is Sarah and Pete out at Maracaibo installing boxes for us. And we monitor these boxes every year using the peeper camera for that purpose as well. So we can peek in, see if anybody's home. And we also generally clean them out and add fresh shavings every year as well. We've installed 62 nest boxes on Salt Spring, and not a single one has been used by owl yet. Starting to take that personally, but I try not to. Hopefully that will change. Tanya's had a bit more luck. This is one of a nest box that I think would have been on Vancouver Island, I imagine, Tanya? So this is the female and her sweet little downy chicks right here, and some feather remains of some prey item, a songbird that was brought in for them. So what are the threats to Western screech owls? Why are we seeing that these owls have severely gone down in numbers over probably since the 80s? We really started to notice this. I think it's kind of multifactorial. We have the main reason is probably habitat loss, deforestation from logging, development for housing and other development for humans. The removal of dead trees. So screech owls require those cavities for nesting and roosting. And if we cut down dead trees, then woodpeckers are not moving in and creating these cavities, nor are natural cavities being made in dead trees. So I mentioned before, predation by barred owls. They are a relatively new species to the coast, so we have, unfortunately, they've been a big factor as well. Rodenticide use, second generation anticoagulant rodenticides have been banned for residential use in BC, which is a positive, but it is still used in agricultural and other essential applications, for which I don't really know what essential means, but if we can use different methods for controlling rodents and allow owls to do their job, we will be they'll be better off for sure, and we will too ultimately. Also, something that's being studied by Tara Martin's lab is the impacts on our ecosystems by the hyperabundance of deer. Deer don't have very much natural predators left on the islands. We do have cougar, but not enough. So this is an image. We've all seen forest types like this on Salt Spring that have been so heavily browsed that there is hardly any understory. And this has a variety of impacts for a lot of species, but how this trickles down or trickles up to owls is that there be a less diversity of prey and probably less numbers of prey. So songbird nesting in the lower canopy of, if you have a healthy forest with shrub layers, you will have more songbirds, and also that shrub layer provides protection for chicks when they first fledge. So when chicks are first fledging from their nest, they can't really fly. They only have probably their wings and tails are only pretty well half grown at that point. They're not very strong. So they end up on the ground. Or if the forest is healthy, they can hopefully land in a shrub and have some protection. But these birds, these little chicks are amazing. They'll, like these guys were in a forest type that did not provide any shrub layer cover, but they would have hopped over to the trunk of this tree, and by flapping their little wings really hard and using their pointed talons and legs, they flap and fly and climb up the tree by flapping and climbing. It's pretty amazing. But this kind of forest that is not so browsed heavily by deer just offers much more protection for the young owls and much more prey for the adults to actually have a better access to prey for feeding. And this is another young fledgling, was way up high in a cedar tree. It took me a long time to find these guys. There were 3 fledglings here all together. So thinking about ways that we on Salt Spring, especially landowners, can help screech owls. If we are ever able to support management of deer populations for the health of our ecosystems, it would be great if we had public support for that. I know we have a certain number of people who hunt deer on the island, but certainly not enough who can actually help control these populations. Seek safe methods for rodent control and allow for the owls to help with that naturally. And one of the best things we can do is retain dead and dying trees on your property. So if you have a tree that's even you're considering could be a danger tree to your house, if you can take the big limbs off of it and leave a tall stump, like even 15, 20 feet tall, that's not going to catch wind and blow over, that can provide enough of a tree for woodpeckers to excavate. This is a tree on our property that I decided to not cut it for firewood and just leave it be. And the next year, a pair of northern flickers built a nest and raised young. So I'm hoping maybe an owl will move in next. So just hoping to have owls next year here. And this is a little guy, kind of, I think it was Lower Erskine, I found this guy. So just as a kind of a goodbye for this little talk that I've given is just another video of an owl flying away. Funny. There we go. There he goes. So I just wanted to thank everybody who provided images for this talk. And so Tanya and Megan and Aiden and Madeline and my brother Mike and Rowan, my partner, and myself who provided most of them. So at this point, I'd love to turn it back to Deborah because there may be some questions from participants of myself or Tanya or Megan. Happy to hear your questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ren. That was amazing. I love the videos. There was so much good footage there. And it was really fun to hear from Tanya and Megan as well. That was a very cool surprise. So anyone in the audience, if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat now. We'll leave a few minutes here and see if any come through, and I'll read them to Ren. We've got another one here from Pierre. Do you have an idea of preferred orientations, density? How much suitable habitat do we have on island?
Great question. I stopped the share. I hope that's okay. Or I think I did.
No, you're still sharing,
Oh, I'm still sharing. Okay. If I stop the share, then it will show me. Is that
Yes.
right? Or do
Yeah.
you still show me? I don't know.
It will show you bigger.
It'll show me bigger. Okay. Um, so on Salt Spring, we have a lot of quite excellent habitat actually, and where we're finding the owls mostly are in larger contiguous forested areas. So some of our larger parks, ecological reserves, reserves that the Conservancy are managing. It's been very interesting to see that be quite consistent. These owls used to show up in residential areas. They were one of the most common owls, like in Victoria, even in residential areas, but now they're practically gone. So the fact that we're finding them now here, mainly in larger forested areas, is quite interesting. We'll see how much that plays out. But on Salt Spring, they're even using second growth habitat. So sometimes we would look at it and think, wow, this isn't the greatest looking habitat, but there they are. The other thing that we're finding is that screech owls are often in the same territorial area as great horned owl pairs. So it's almost a situation where the great horned are like a friendly foe in a way. So great horns, barred owl will prey on barred owls. Barred owls will prey on screech owls. So having great horns are acting, I think, as somewhat of a protection for screech owls. Not that they wouldn't prey on screech owls, but it just doesn't seem like it happens as often. I know Tanya had a screech owl. It was nesting within what, 20 meters of a great horned owl nest? I don't know if
Yeah,
Tanya.
it was within 100 meters. It was really close.
Yeah. So what I'm finding too on the ARUs is that I quite often now, the last batch on a transect that I did in the far reaches of Salt Spring, how often I'm having screech owls singing at the same time as great horned owls. It has happened numerous times this year. So they're not as nervous of great horns, it seems, or else they're being rather, I don't know, brave. I'm not sure.
I have another question here from Rowan. How high up are those chicks?
Those chicks were about hmm, 30 feet, 35 feet up. Do you remember, Tanya? Something like that, eh?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I think for a while we were laying flat on the forest floor with our bins straight up to be able to see them way up there.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
neck, you have to have strong neck muscles
Yeah. Or else you lay down. I
to lay
remember
on the forest.
yeah, when we found those birds, we were inspecting one of the cavities and then we heard all of these songbirds freaking out. Like they were just alarming like crazy. And I walked over, looked up, and there were the chicks. So quite often songbirds can be a help for us finding either adult owls or chicks. It's quite you got to keep your ears open for what's going on out there.
Thank you. We have a question from Galliano Conservancy. Have you seen the uptake of nest boxes elsewhere?
Yes. I bet you, Tanya, you're going to be the best answer to that one because you've had a lot more success than me, who's had zero success.
So I guess there's a couple ways to answer that question. If uptake is, are there places other than Salt Spring Island that are doing nest boxes? Just to let everyone know that their Birds Canada is tracking all of our nest box efforts. So when we install them, we've been providing that data so that we know the efforts across the South Coast. And I'm fairly certain we're over 700 nest boxes on the South Coast now. And I'd say probably half of those are on Vancouver Island, if not more. Habitat Acquisition Trust in Victoria has, I think, 140 or 150 now, mostly all on private lands. And there's been a couple places through those efforts where it's been very helpful to learn the importance of putting clusters of nest boxes on multiple adjacent properties. We have one where four different landowners next to each other each have 6 to 10 nest boxes, and three of the four properties have been chosen in different years for nesting. And I think it's like eight of the something like 32 boxes have been used since 2015. So it's amazing. Like when they find a place that they want to live and it's working for them, it's a really wonderful when that is successful. Where the nest boxes have not been very successful, and I still have high hopes for Salt Spring. I keep telling Ren that keep your hopes up.
Thanks,
It's gonna
Tanya.
happen. It's probably gonna be in that flicker cavity in your property. You
I
deserve it.
know.
I'm so hoping for that. I'm visualizing.
Yeah, thanks.
Um,
That'd be great.
but up island on some of the places where perhaps due to harvest patterns, there just aren't any local populations, and then you put a couple hundred boxes up, it's just the odds of the birds even stumbling, flying, and during dispersal and just coming across one of those, literally, it's kind of like a needle in a haystack that they would happen to. But on one photo that Ren shared, it did happen up by Strathcona Dam many years ago. We put some boxes up, and one of those was used the right way the year after it was installed, but we knew they were in the area. So
Hmm.
that was very helpful. And the same thing with Habitat Acquisition Trust, a lot of those properties as well. We know that they need the potential nest cavities because we can't see many around. And so it also could be where people are putting boxes up. The owls have good cavities, natural cavities, and so they kind of look at the box like, what do you put that there for? I don't know.
I think that's what's happened quite a bit on
Yeah.
Salt Spring because we know that these pairs are fledgling young. We just don't know where the natural cavity is. We look and we look and we look. We don't find it, but I know from the ARU there's those chicks. So I'd rather they use natural cavities. I think it's better, but so I'm glad they're finding them. They just don't need my boxes.
We've got a thank you here from Susan on Gabriola. She wanted to thank you for promoting population control of hyperabundant deer for all the reasons mentioned, including habitat restoration for so many bird and small mammal species. There's
You're welcome. Yeah,
a-
it it's a really serious problem for sure. And it's not, the deer are not as healthy as they could be either. It's not great. Overpopulation of anything isn't the best.
We have a question here from Elena, who, to summarize, is wondering if an owl would take a whole rabbit back to its nest or if it would only take it in bits and pieces.
Well, rabbit is one of the favorite foods of great horned owls. And because they are like the great horned owl nests that I've monitored, that they've used one tree, the same tree for 14 years in a row. And it's a big open topped fir. So it's broken off and it's kind of like a chimney shape. So it's all hollowed out. And it's big enough that that owl could bring the whole rabbit back. And then especially when the chicks are young, they'll they'll pull it apart into pieces and feed it very tenderly to their chicks. So I imagine as the chicks get older and can start going at a prey item themselves, they'll start working on it. But at first, the adults will pick it apart. And when you see pellets from great horned owls, the bones of rabbit, they're actually kind of broken, like they've been broken with their bill and swallowed. So they
Wow.
kind of dissect it and gulp it down, basically.
Wow. Another question here from Rowan. Is there any reason to think that screech pairs like living near one another, given that what Tanya is saying about the proximity of boxes being used?
They wouldn't want, I think the proximity of what Tanya was talking about was there was a cluster of boxes and the owls moved to different boxes subsequent years.
Exactly. Yeah, different
Yeah.
years. And I think the clustering, like sometimes somebody will say, well, we put up, 100 boxes and none were used, but you have to think, well, how were those 100 boxes distributed? And were there like a lot of those boxes, like I just said, this is a case where you have like 34 that are all in one territory, right? And then in that one territory, that same pair has picked, and all these boxes are all within like a couple hundred meters of one another. And so it just sometimes how I think about it is if you go into a natural mature forest, there's probably, well, dozens at least, if not hundreds of potential cavities because of how long those trees have been there. So I like to give them as many options as possible.
Yeah. And I think as closely as territories can be to one another, I think on the coast here, if it's really good habitat, they can be 300 to 400 meters apart from each other. Is that what we've
Historically, that's
historically?
what apparently along the Dave Fraser has those reports from UVic campus along a creek or somewhere on a creek near UVic where there were multiple territories every 400 meters. I think you and I, Ren, have confirmed 600 on a number of occasions with ARUs in recent years, which has been extremely encouraging. Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I have two territories that are within, I would say, I think they're 800 meters apart, the two that I found, or a bit less than that.
And Megan, if you're still here, what's the closest distance? Because you have the most accurate data by also including telemetry,
Well,
which is
yeah.
so important. And we haven't had the opportunity to do that on the coast yet for this species. And so I know I would love if you could share that story where you thought one was nesting and how far it moved as well.
Yeah, we had, are you talking about the young
No,
that dispersed?
the adult in the early spring and
Okay.
first of all, just what are your closest two territories, two nests?
Closest two nests were 230 meters, and then I had three that were all within 400 of each other.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but tight packed in the interior. There's not a whole lot of habitat.
Okay.
Not that there's tons.
And that was riparian habitat, like fairly healthy.
Yeah,
Lot,
mature cottonwood.
yeah, lots of
Habitat.
food. Yeah,
Yep.
great.
We've got a comment here from Sophia at Galliano that they don't like the boxes on Galliano either.
I'm not the only one. Okay.
And Thetis would say the same.
Uh,
I think they have about 80 now, and as well, I think they're getting a little frustrated with the lack of love those boxes are being shown.
yeah. Oh dear. But they know they have Screech-Owls on Thetis now, right?
Yes, and even there's been reports and photos of screech owls on some of the even little islands right adjacent to Thetis. So we know they're there. And I just like to say, well, hopefully that reflects there's lots of lovely secure nests for them. They're just not so obvious to us.
Yeah, and I know that Sophie on the mainland, I don't know if she's had any success with her boxes, but there's not many Screech-Owls over there.
Yeah, she has not yet. She's had sawets though, and so it's
Yeah,
still very lovely to have sawets using them.
yeah, I'd love that too.
It looks like we have one final comment here from Pierre. If you're correct about the protection idea, it sounds like we should target great horned owl nests and pepper their territory with WESO boxes.
Ah, that's an interesting thought.
Mhm.
Um, I haven't considered that before. However, there's places that I'd love to put boxes up that happen. I know there's Screech-Owls and there happens to be great horns in the area as well, but we can't get permission yet to put boxes up there, which is rather frustrating. One thing I was also thinking of, if we're in habitat that doesn't offer the size of tree that would be worthy or good for great horned owls, you can provide kind of like a basket type thing in a tree that great horns will utilize if as long as you fill it with sticks and make it act like a like a red-tailed hawk nest or something. They will reuse those. So you can, I've been wondering about making some attractive nest places for great horns. But I'm a little bit worried because they do predate on screech owls. They're not not guilty of the same thing. So I don't know about that one.
Hmm. All right, that looks to be it. Nothing else left in the chat. So again, big thank you to Ren for your presentation this evening. Thank you also for Tanya and Megan to join and tell us a little bit about your experiences in the field. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to email them to me and I can get them to Ren. This has been recorded, as you know, and so eventually it will be available for viewing on the SSIC website as well as on our YouTube page. And I think that's it. Thank you so
Oh,
much, everyone.
yeah, I'd like to thank everyone too, and thanks Tanya and Megan, and also Deborah for coming out and helping us, even though she has a cold. So thanks a lot for hosting us tonight, Deborah.
Absolutely. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night.